stormy winter, staying here tonight.
Howdy-ya, shindiggers. My name is Steve Holroyd. By my side, as always, is Sam the Wonder Pug, and you are listening to The Front Row, your audio source of American online soccer history goodness. Since our first episode, people have asked, why Sammy the Wonder Pug? Well, she's the Wonder Pug because she wonders. And in between snores, sighs, and the occasional bout of flatulence, she asks, why does American soccer history matter? Why is American soccer history relevant to what's going on today? One reason why it matters is because it contains lessons. William Shakespeare wrote, "What's past is prologue." Or, as your high school history teacher may have told you, those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. Other professional sports in the U.S. largely avoid repeating mistakes because they have the luxury of knowing their history. For instance, you may be wondering why the NHL is putting a new team in Las Vegas, of all places, even though they already have a bunch of less than successful Sunbelt franchises languishing in the league. It's not about the exorbitant franchise fees, although they're not to be discounted, but it's more about the lesson the league learned in the 1970s. And that lesson is, if you leave enough cities lying around without a hockey team, you will soon find yourself dealing with a rival league. In the 1970s, the World Hockey Association arrived, and while it was great for the sport, as it opened the door for Europeans and college players and introduced a more freewheeling style of hockey, it was terrible for business, as the competition drove up player salaries and costs across the board. It was just a bad idea. For the NHL, anyway. So the NHL has learned to make sure that it doesn't happen again. But enough about hockey. In the past year, we have heard that the North American Soccer League is making noise about bringing an antitrust suit against U.S. soccer. The NASL is claiming that U.S. soccer is trying to inhibit competition by essentially doubling the criteria for Division I status, and indeed doing it while a petition for D1 status is pending. And because lawyers do what they do, I'm sure the NASL has been told that this is a can't-miss proposition. But again, what's past is prologue. So we're going to talk about another family squabble that has plagued American soccer in the past. The Soccer War. No, we're not referring to the 100-day war between El Salvador and Honduras that is also sometimes referred to as the Soccer War because hostilities between the two would tend to escalate whenever one side would beat the other in a 1970 World Cup qualifier. No, we are going to talk about the American Soccer War of 1928 and 1929. There is one thing that makes soccer much different than every other professional sport in this country. In baseball, football, hockey, and basketball, the professional leagues govern themselves and are largely answerable to no one. And that has always been the case. Calling them what they are, they're monopolies. And while there are court decisions saying they aren't, as the courts gingerly dance around the issue because it's sports, the fact is they're monopolies. Soccer, on the other hand, being an international sport, has to deal with the existence of FIFA and its subordinate regulating bodies, such as U.S. Soccer, which I always refer to as the USSF. Soccer is the only sport where a group of outsiders, people without an equity stake in whatever professional league exists, and assuming none of the risks of keeping a league up and running, get to tell men of means how they're supposed to run their business. As you might imagine, such an arrangement tends to chafe here in America. Owners of soccer teams, both now and in the 1920s, also owned other teams. The owner of the New York Giants in baseball, for instance, also owned the soccer team, although ironically, not the one in the ASL called the New York Giants. Trademark was a little looser back then. These men of means, used to getting their own way, find it difficult to have to be answerable to an outside organization that is basically bringing absolutely nothing to the table, with the possible exception of access to a worldwide player pool, since players are essentially licensed by FIFA. The bottom line is, in order to play professionally, you need a license, and that license is issued by FIFA. The American soccer war arose because of this conflict. The USSF ran, then as now, its annual Challenge Cup, what we now call the Open Cup, and that cup was a source of considerable revenue for the Federation. American Soccer League teams, many of whom participated in the cup before joining the ASL, continued to do so, but began to resent the fact that the USSF made absolutely no attempt to accommodate the ASL teams and their already crowded league schedule. Also, the ASL teams realized that people were coming out to see them play against small sides many times, in these cup ties, but that they were getting almost none of the gate receipts. The USSF kept it all. The ASL tried a compromise of sorts by establishing a league cup, the Lewis Cup. The Lewis Cup actually existed as a regional cup donated by Edgar Lewis of Bethlehem Steel fame, and he brought it back in the mid-1920s to make it the ASL's League Cup, with the hope, the ASL's hope, that by staging a League Cup they could get the USSF off their backs when the ASL said, oh gosh, we're not participating in the Open Cup this year. However, that didn't work, in no small part because the USSF did not get gate receipts from Lewis Cup matches. But it wasn't just about money. There was also an issue of control. The ASL owners grew very weary of the USSF/FIFA rules that they thought were silly. Now, it's almost impossible to imagine today, with MLS such a small player in the world marketplace for footballers, but in 1927, the ASL was a real threat. And in Scotland in particular, it was known as the American Menace because of the ASL's penchant for going over and signing top Scottish players, and in several cases, even where those players were already under contract. FIFA threatened to expel the USSF because of the ASL's actions, and the USSF bowed to FIFA's wishes and stepped on the ASL. Having to bow to a foreign authority did not sit well with ASL owners. In protest, in the summer of 1928, the ASL voted to not participate in the Open Cup, claiming overcrowded schedules, but really making a stab at asserting authority over the sport. The professionals wanted control over the sport over the amateurs. And while it's a simplistic divide, that's really what it was. The USSF were run by amateurs. The ASL was comprised of professionals. And the thought was, by boycotting the Open Cup, the USSF would not get revenues, and again, it was a power play. There was a slight problem, though. 3 ASL teams, including Bethlehem Steel, refused to withdraw from the Cup. Bethlehem Steel in particular had a great history with the Cup. It wanted to continue in it. As a result, the ASL suspended these 3 teams, Bethlehem Steel, New York Giants, again, not the one owned by the baseball team, and Newark, from the ASL, from the league. The USSF, in turn, suspended the ASL, took away its sanction, making it an outlaw league. Ramping up the stakes, the USSF started a competing pro league in October 1928, the Eastern Soccer League, which featured the 3 expelled ASL teams and a number of other local clubs in the New York, North Jersey area. The ASL, for its part, also soldiered on, but it was chaos. In fact, it saw one of its top clubs, the New Bedford Whalers, jump to the Eastern League and then jump back again during the course of the season. Naturally, the soccer public was split. Attendances were less than anticipated in both leagues. It was a mess. Support for from the USSF from other national federations, though, wore down the ASL. Because of the consequences of having the license to play removed by FIFA, players were not keen to join an outlaw league. And those who did were savvy enough to use the ASL's outlaw status as a bargaining chip and commanded premium salaries. The ASL was losing money, was leaking like a sieve. As a result, the soccer war ended on October 9, 1929, with the ASL basically agreeing to all of the USSF's terms. If the date October 1929 rings a bell, that's because 20 days later, October 29, 1929, the stock market crashed and the Great Depression began. Those two body blows effectively killed the original American Soccer League. Anyway, the soccer war was all over control. Specifically, men of means questioning why FIFA and the USSF had any say over their businesses at all. You are seeing that same storm brewing now with the NASL. Apparently, the NASL wants to be Major League. No problem there, right? You just do what, say, the American League in baseball did in 1901. You announce, hey, we're major now, come watch us. And you compete for players, and it's off to the races. In the United States, however, for soccer, you need to be sanctioned as a Division I league by the USSF, which, as I mentioned earlier, has rather conveniently basically doubled the standards for D1 membership, while the NASL's petition for D1 status is pending. So yeah, we are seeing another soccer war brewing for mostly the same reasons as in 1929. The big difference now is that the parties, or challenging parties, are more adept at wielding a hammer that was not really in play in the 1920s, and that is federal antitrust law. The NASL is already threatening to go down that road. And it's going to be a very costly process no matter who wins, just like in the soccer war. Now, the NASL may think, aha, because we have antitrust this time, we can't lose. However, as I said earlier, what's past is prologue. U.S. soccer has some history with antitrust law, and we'll talk about that next time. That's it for this show. Just a reminder, you can now subscribe to us on iTunes, and ratings and reviews are always helpful. You can follow us at Twitter, at Section 107 Row A, and you can email us with questions, comments, criticism at soccermaven, that's soccer, M-A-V-N, at yahoo.com. So, until next time, this is Steve Holroyd with Sam the Wonder Pug saying, keep your feet on the ground, and you won't be called for dangerous play. Catch you next time.
And now we're happy to see you succeed in everywhere you are. Cause you're keener than Keegan, and you're better than best. We always knew you'd go far. You're a 70s football star.